Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our weekly update. Today I am joined by Dr. Lawrence Lowe, our Medical Officer of Health here at the Region of Peel, Tim Beckett, our Fire Chief and Director of Emergency Management, Sherry Lichterman, our Commissioner for Corporate Services, and David Wojcik, President and CEO of the Mississauga Board of Trade. Here in Mississauga, we continue to see declining trends with an average of 5 new daily cases over the past week. We're holding steady in single digits with only 1 new case reported in Mississauga today. We also continue to make progress as a region, and today, that hard work has paid off. Earlier this morning, the Premier announced that Peel Region, along with Toronto, will be moving to Stage 3 on Friday, July 31st. I would like to thank Premier Ford, Minister Elliott, and Ontario's Chief Medical Officer for allowing us to take a few extra days to make sure that we get this right. Mississauga is ready to move forward, and there is no turning back. This is a significant milestone, but one that we cannot take lightly. At the same time, there's no need to rush into it. My message to businesses is clear. If you're not ready and don't feel comfortable opening your doors, then please don't. Continue to encourage your employees to work from home where possible and develop a safe return-to-work plan. To my residents, I continue to ask that you do everything in your power to help prevent the spread of this virus. While this is the last stage in the province's framework for reopening, by no means does it signal that this pandemic is over. Far from it. Our risk of a second wave this fall is very real. It may even be inevitable. Our actions today and in the weeks and months to come will determine its severity. So let's play it smart, let's play it safe, and please don't become complacent. The last thing we need is to be in lockdown once again. Other jurisdictions around the world show us that a second wave is likely, so we cannot become complacent. Stage 3 will see the reopening of virtually all businesses and public spaces in Mississauga. As of this Friday, July 31st, the limits on indoor public gatherings in Mississauga will increase from 10 to 50. Outdoor gatherings will be up to 100 individuals will be permitted. Bars and restaurants can begin to serve their customers inside, and fitness clubs and gyms can reopen their doors as well. People still need to be mindful of physical distancing, and face coverings are still required in all indoor public areas. I want to once again remind residents that some people are not required to wear face coverings, such as those under the age of 2 and people with medical conditions or physical disabilities. In terms of the City of Mississauga facilities and amenities included in Stage 3, staff have been working diligently to prepare for a reopening plan. I want to thank them for being nimble and mindful and working to carefully open our facilities. We will continue to take a phased approach and be cautious to reopening, and I want to thank residents in advance for their patience. As always, City staff are here to help our residents with any questions they may have about what's open and what's closed by either calling 311 or visiting mississauga.ca/recovery. Starting Friday, July 31st, the City will begin reopening all City playgrounds and outdoor fitness equipment, permitting non-contact games on City sports fields, allowing group bookings up to 100 for sports fields and picnic areas in parks for private use only, and limited facility and ice rentals. Starting August 4th, we will begin reopening some aspects of our cultural facilities and our museums, our courthouse for some services such as paying parking fines, provincial offences notices, or filing for a trial date. We are working towards a more fulsome and phased reopening of our community centres, of our libraries, and City Hall this fall. This includes our fitness centres, indoor pools, recreation programs, and meeting room rentals. For now, community centres will remain open exclusively for summer day camps. We are doing this to ensure the health and safety of our campers, their families, and our staff, and to give us the time we need to design new programming and to ensure that we have everything in place to operate safely. Libraries will continue to offer returns and curbside pickup and delivery for the time being. We are planning to open select locations for computer use only next month, with a more comprehensive reopening later this fall. While we have much to celebrate, I cannot stress enough that this pandemic is not over. We have seen what has happened in other jurisdictions like Montreal, Edmonton, and Kelowna when restrictions were loosened. Stage 3 is a big deal. We must act carefully and not lose the progress that we have already made. Please, don't let your guard down. Just because large gatherings are permitted doesn't mean you should start filling up your social calendar. Reckless behavior, such as we saw last weekend in Brampton, puts all of our progress on the line. Be thoughtful, be cautious, be considerate, and continue to think of others in your bubble, your aging parents, your grandparents, or those outside your bubble who don't have the ability to fight the virus. Before I turn it over to Dr. Lowe, I'd like to personally thank Premier Ford and Prime Minister Trudeau for working together and delivering for cities. This week was a good one for Mississauga and for cities right across Ontario. The federal and provincial commitment of $4 billion for Ontario municipalities through this agreement, including $2 billion specifically for transit, is a game changer. While we still face some tough decisions as we plan our 2020 and 2021 budgets, this deal will help us remain strong and will allow us to continue to provide the essential services our residents and our businesses rely on. It recognizes the financial pressures we face, as well as the indispensable role that cities play in delivering essential services that keep our economy and our society running. I look forward to learning how much will be allocated to Mississauga and specifically how we can use this money to address our losses as we embark on the road to recovery. A strong economic recovery will require strong cities. My sincere thanks to the Premier and Prime Minister for this historic agreement. And with that, I'd now like to turn it over to our Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Lawrence Lowe, to provide us with a brief update. Thank you, Dr. Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good afternoon. Among thousands of cases that Peel Public Health has investigated since the start of this pandemic, these past weeks have seen our new daily cases drop to single digits in Mississauga. And the region overall, we are seeing our 7-day moving average of cases continue to trend downwards, and our capacity to test, trace, isolate, and treat remain optimal and ready to respond. We learned this morning that the province will be moving Peel into Stage 3 on Friday. I know we did not get here without a lot of hard work and sacrifice, and certainly recalling those who we lost along the way. But overall, as a community, we all came together here in Mississauga and Peel and across Ontario. We were the difference, and we succeeded despite our tight connections with the United States and the crisis that unfolded in New York in March. Your hard work means that we are now writing the story of this pandemic in our community, not the virus. And I know that the past few months have not been easy, which is why I want to be abundantly clear. Entering stage 3 does not mean this is over. On the contrary, stage 3 is the hardest part of the pandemic. I'll say that again. Stage 3 is the hardest and longest phase of the pandemic. I liken it to graduation. You think the challenging bit is over, but then you discover that you have to adult for the rest of your life. Now, all analogies break down, and I'm confident that COVID-19 will not be around that long, but the gist is the same. We've now achieved something, and if we want to keep our gains, if we want to hold on to the pieces of life that we have clawed back from COVID-19, we need to do the right thing every day going forward until a vaccine, a definitive treatment, or a change in the viral picture arrives. That means practicing the core 4 behaviors of hand washing, distancing, masking where you can't or when you're in an inside public place, and staying home and getting tested if you are sick. Consistency is the key. Everyone doing these things. Every business or social convener providing the conditions for people to do this through precautions. This is how we will keep COVID-19 under control while we reclaim some of the nice things that we have in our lives. Remember that COVID-19 spreads from person to person. So if I had to boil the core 4 down even more, I would simply say this: limit numbers and proximity. If you want to socialize, have smaller gatherings, spread apart, outside. Meet with fewer friends or clients on each appointment, and keep a list of who you've hung out with, everyone that you've hung out with, in the event that we need it for contact tracing. You can include your loved ones and grandparents in a closer bubble, but make sure you protect them by staying apart and masking when interacting with people outside of your bubble. But I want to be clear, we absolutely do need to reconnect with each other. Relationships are fundamental to human well-being, but relationships are also fundamental to the spread of COVID-19, which is why how we interact is so important. So I say simply, go forth into stage 3, but let's not invite COVID-19 over for dinner. Limit proximity and numbers, stick to the core 4, and you will get to greet your family and friends while showing the virus the door. It's the only way forward. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to Mayor Crombie.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. Our local businesses have much to celebrate today as we move into stage 3. I continue to encourage our residents to buy and to shop local and to help our local businesses get back on their feet. 100 businesses have already signed up to Mississauga Made, our online marketplace where residents can connect with local businesses, shop online, and access experiences and activities across our city. Today, we are excited to announce that we will be growing our marketplace by welcoming Ritual One to Mississauga. This food app provides restaurants and food services such as grocers, butchers, and bakers with an easy way to accept digital orders commission-free. Mississauga businesses who sign up for Ritual One by September 1st will receive their service free for life. Today's news is even more exciting given Ritual One's co-founders, Ray, Robert, and Larry, are Mississauga Made, themselves having built their app in the early days out of the Central Library in Mississauga. They are incredibly proud of their roots, and we are incredibly proud of them to have such successful entrepreneurs right here in our city. Businesses who are interested in joining Mississauga's Made or Virtual One can visit mississaugamade.ca. I now want to invite David Wojcik, President and CEO of the Mississauga Board of Trade, to speak to what entering Stage 3 means for the Mississauga business community.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Dr. Lowe, Chief Beckett, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Mississauga Board of Trade, I want to thank you, Madam Mayor, for inviting us to be part of this announcement today. The past 5 months have been an extremely difficult time for businesses in Mississauga and across the country. The effects of COVID-19 pandemic are widespread and have inflicted permanent damage on many business sectors. The Mississauga Board of Trade has been here to support and advise local business, to help them gain access to government programs and assistance as a strong resource for them. As well, through our partnerships with the Canadian and Ontario Chamber of Commerce, we have been advocating for various government emergency assistance programs to be improved or changed so more businesses can qualify and receive the support they need. Although many of these have changed, some still lack the right rules and regulations to provide much-needed support for businesses to recover. We are proud of programs like Canada United, the Canadian Business Resiliency Network, and the Recovery Activation Program that are providing direct financial and other assistance to business. We are also moving forward with our own Mississauga Economic Recovery Group with leading Mississauga CEOs to start the planning for a longer-term recovery of Mississauga's economy. On the local level, we would like to thank the City of Mississauga, and in particular, the Mississauga Economic Development Office for its leadership during this time and for its support in programs like Mississauga Made and other direct support programs. Finally, we are very pleased that the Mayor has established the Economic Resiliency Task Force through the Mississauga Economic Development Office, and we thank the Mayor for inviting MBOT to be part of that process and are pleased to be part of the Mississauga Economic Recovery Group. Today, Premier Ford and the provincial government announced that Peel Region can move into Stage 3 business openings on Friday. This is a very welcome piece of news, as many more businesses will be able to open and provide services to their customers. Well, this has been a long time coming. We encourage businesses to follow the strict health and safety protocols as outlined by our Chief Medical Officer, and respect the mandatory face covering bylaw for indoor public places, and have adequate personal protective equipment and other supplies pertinent to their business. Let's all move to Stage 3 safely together. Working together, we are stronger. Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, David. As we approach the beginning of Eid al-Adha, I would like to say Assalamu alaikum and Eid Mubarak to our city's Muslim community. I know that mosques are an important community hub, especially during Eid, so I'm very pleased that thanks to our collective efforts, places of worship have been able to reopen at 30% of their capacity. As you celebrate, please gather responsibly, keep your distance, and continue to practice COVID-19 prevention. Now is not the time to get creative when it comes to the rules. I ask that you continue to practice the pillars of Ramadan, charity and sacrifice, by being responsible and limiting your interactions with others. I'd like to thank our Muslim community and the mosques throughout our city for their leadership and support during this challenging time, including generously donating to the food bank and to our local hospital. Thank you, and I would like to now take questions from the media.
Mayor Crombie, your first question comes from Ashley Newport from Mississauga. Ashley, please go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Crombie.
Ashley?
I think this question is for both you and Dr. Lowe. Today, when the province announced that Mississauga and Toronto, when Peel and Toronto would be going into Stage 3, the province did say that it supports. They just mentioned the City of Toronto the idea that additional public health measures will be placed on bars and restaurants, but they didn't actually say that they were going to implement this at the provincial level. So since it doesn't look at this point like the province will implement additional rules around capacity and seating at bars and restaurants and gyms and whatnot, is the city of Mississauga or the region of Peel going to implement their own special rules around these establishments?
So Ashley, it's a very good question. I thank you. Of course, entering stage 3 is a very significant milestone and one that we don't take lightly, and we encourage all our businesses not to go forward if they're not ready. With respect to additional guidelines, we are looking, the city is looking, we're asking for legal advice, whether we would implement some of the same measures that Toronto is considering and what the ramifications would be, whether we did it by city bylaw or if it's more appropriate for Dr. Lowe to place the order. So we would be looking at some of the same restrictions to ensure a maximum capacity of 50, to ensure that everyone is seated, that there is no lingering at the bar, and if possible, to curb operations, time limits, so that bars and pubs would have to close by midnight if possible. But certainly we know that with a few libations, people may be a little lax on following the rules and the guidelines, so we want to ensure drinking very responsibly. This is, again, not the time to fill up your social calendar. With respects to fitness clubs and gyms, we're also very concerned because it's a breeding ground, and we know that working out will generate a lot of sweat, and the risk of transmission in those circumstances is increased. So we encourage our fitness clubs and gyms to practice very safe hygiene and good sanitary practices, including wiping down all the equipment after it's used, limiting the capacity, registering online, etc. So we'll certainly be looking at some of those guidelines that the City of Toronto is interested in implementing right here in the City of Mississauga. The region of Peel has risen for the summer, so that would be up to our city and the medical officer of health. I'll ask him to respond in 1 second. And I would suggest that we may go one step further and include face coverings in indoor common areas of private facilities such as rental apartments and condominiums. That is also something, Ashley, that we are looking at and seeking legal advice on. Dr. Lowe, is there anything you'd like to add? I'm going to ask Dr. Lowe to contribute, okay?
Thank you, Mayor Crombie, and thank you, Ashley, for the question. It's an opportunity for me to reiterate the most important fact of the matter. It's leaving aside the fact that we're entering into stage 3. We very much are still in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. And we do know that with essential travel outside of Canada's borders, which our residents partake in, as well as travel even domestically to other provinces where they are seeing a surge in cases, there is always a possibility that someone may re-import COVID-19 into our community. And we also do know we still see new daily cases every day, and that there is possibly transmission, that it continues to occur in the community. So it's for those reasons that we need to all continue taking precautions, and especially having moved more gradually and moved in a more considered fashion here in Peel and in Ontario, we have had the advantage of being able to see how other jurisdictions have handled reopening, and it is clear that indoor dining in restaurants and bars, as well as fitness centers and gyms, have seen potential increases in risk for exposure and transmission of COVID-19, and it is for those reasons that I have made and supported the recommendations that Mayor Crombie has spoken to, and certainly welcome the ongoing conversation as to action that may be taken here in the region of Peel if we don't see any other changes at other levels of government. So thank you very much for the question. I'll pass it back to the Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then my follow-up question is, I know that back in May, the city decided that it wasn't going to host or allow any big gatherings until after September 7th. I know that the gatherings are still limited at this point to 100 people outside, 50 people inside, which is still not massive. Does the city have any plans to allow any scaled or pared down public events at Celebration Square or other city facilities after September 7th?
So Ashley, currently, as you know, we have the spacing circles designated. There are 48 of them at Celebration Square where people can come and enjoy the beautiful square and enjoy the fountain. But there are currently no outdoor festivals on the books for the remaining period of the year that I'm aware of.
Mayor Crombie, your next question comes from Steve Cornwell from the Mississauga News. Steve, please go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Crombie.
Hey, Steve, thank you for coming.
My pleasure. So just another follow-up on the question about additional measures for bars and restaurants and fitness clubs. Can you clarify whether you're seeking legal advice for both bars or for bars, restaurants, and fitness clubs first? And is this something that you're hoping to get in place potentially for Friday, or is it something that would be installed kind of retroactively?
So, Steve, yes, we're seeking legal advice on guidelines for bars and pubs, for fitness clubs, and also indoor common areas in private residences such as rental apartments and condominiums, etc. So we're seeking legal advice, and we would pass a city bylaw at council, I presume, next Wednesday, but I don't think this could be implemented retroactively. It would be going forward as of next week, should the motion pass, should we receive the legal advice that we are able to, and should council so decide to move that motion, which I believe there is a great deal of interest in doing so.
Right. And speaking of next council meeting, I understand there's a consideration, council will be considering kind of changing bylaws to allow park staff to potentially shut down protests that are deemed to be hateful following an incident earlier this month. Can you kind of tell us about this motion and whether you'd be supportive of it, and why, if so, why is it important to do this?
So as you are aware, there was a demonstration that occurred on July 4th where there were statements of hate speech used, and we take this very seriously. Those are being investigated by Peel Police, and certainly our council will be considering what other measures we can put in place should future gatherings, future protests, future rallies or marches use hateful language, and how we can deter this from occurring before it occurs.
Your next question comes from Isaac Callan from The Pointer. Isaac, please go ahead.
Mayor Crombie. I'm going to follow up with Ashley's questions about the bars and restaurants and gyms as well, because I think from the outside, this is quite similar to the conversation about masks, where the GTHA mayors asked the province, and the province said that under Section 22, Dr. Lowe could order an order, and then in the end, the council itself passed a bylaw. So for those of us who aren't on the inside, there is council bylaws, there's Dr. Lowe himself, and there are the province, and you've obviously got legal advice as well. What is it that makes this so complicated and a bit of a hot potato that is going between these three groups?
Well, certainly let's start off with, we would prefer, the GTHA mayors prefer that this be province-wide, so there's uniformity and continuity, consistency right across the province. So people in Toronto, people in Markham, individuals in Brampton, Mississauga, Oakville know that the same rules apply to them, just as the face covering measure. As such, the Premier wasn't willing to go forward with the policy, so we left it in our hands. And speaking with Dr. Lowe, he believes that he can only use his Section 22 to enforce restrictions on a specific business rather than an entire industry, so left it up to the council to move a bylaw to do so.
That's perfect. Thank you. My follow-ups for Dr. Lowe.
Thank you. I'll ask Dr. Lowe to come forward. You may want to clarify.
Yeah, I'm happy to clarify. Thank you, Isaac. Go ahead with your question.
So my follow-up is about, I've been having a look at some of the epidemiological reports on the Peel Public Health website and some of the indicators on them, and I was hoping you could explain to me how the decision between yourself and the province to move forward to stage 3 was made. So the July 17th epidemiological report has the 7-day average at 28 cases in non-institutional outbreaks, and then the following week, July the 24th, it has it up to 29, which is an increase. So like most of the areas, the targets are green, but some of them are red and still require attention. So is it a little bit flexible, what you have to meet to proceed to stage 3?
So thank you, Isaac, for the question, and I'll actually do two things. First of all, I'll clarify the orders that I have, the powers that I have under the Section 22 order. And so, Madam Mayor is correct in the sense that we can only use a Section 22 order in a specific instance, either on a person or a class of persons that represent a communicable disease threat. And so that is part of the reason for sort of proceeding cautiously in terms of making sure, because again, you can't necessarily assume that a whole bunch of people that might be going to a restaurant or a bar would classify as a communicable disease threat without necessarily seeing a positive test result. And so I think that's where I'm treading carefully and certainly also obtaining my own legal advice and understanding my powers in that regard. In respect of the indicators, I'm really glad that you asked, because it's very important for me to clarify that the decision is made on the overall picture of all the indicators. So you may have a situation whereas, for example, 28 cases, 29 cases, the regional cases had stayed stable. And mind you, the province's framework for reopening does say stable or declining trend. But the idea being you may have the cases with a stable or declining trend, but as long as you have the capacity to respond, the idea is that you need to go forward, because ultimately you are trying to reduce the other health impacts that are associated with continued closures. We certainly know that employment, human connection, as I've mentioned, the ability for communities to help each other, these are all also things that promote health as well. So it's for those reasons that the indicators are not meant to be all green all the time, but it's meant to be a total overall picture. And I think the last thing I'll add on that as well is, in addition to the new cases, there are also additional measures, as you've seen in there, in terms of looking at the severity of cases in terms of hospitalization, as well as another metric, which is not in our EPI report, but is reported by Public Health Ontario, which looks at linked epidemiologic cases. So how linked are these cases to known outbreaks and known chains of transmission? And on that count, despite the fact that our case count remained 28, 29, most of the cases that we saw were traceable back to a known outbreak, which actually increases the likelihood that we are seeing diminishing community transmission, and therefore the confidence for me to recommend this moving forward. So I think, the most important thing is none of it rests on a single indicator, but on a full picture of what the indicators present. But I thank you very much for the question.
Thank you.
Your last question comes from Khaled from My Second Home TV. Khaled, please go ahead.
Welcome, Khaled.
Hi, Mayor Crombie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. Congratulations for entering stage 3, well awaited, of course. Apart from the hate speech we heard from protesters, and I fully understand the anger and appreciate the loss of whatever that comes with any death or unfortunate accidents. But since when here in Mississauga, we permit protests without permission, and even we give a blind eye for some irresponsible actions during these protests.
So, Khaled, let me first say, here in Mississauga, we have no tolerance for any intolerance, and that is why we take these actions very seriously. I have spoken with the organizers. We've had a discussion around what occurred, and they took what they thought were fair preventative measures such that nothing like this would occur, yet they believe they were blindsided by the language that was used. It was used in Arabic, a language that wasn't spoken by any of the observers, any of the security that we had present, any of the Peel Regional Police members that were present, and so we were unaware of the statements until much later when the incident was filmed on video. The videos were posted and translated for us, and then of course we took action, which is the important thing. I stand with the Jewish community, and here in Mississauga we do not tolerate any hate speech whatsoever. So we will discuss measures that can be in place on public squares going forward. You do not require a permit to gather in a public space. However, that does not mean that you can use whatever language you wish that is intolerant, offensive, or degrading to other people. So that will not be tolerated going forward. And yes, our council will be discussing measures that we can put in place to ensure that doesn't happen again. But no permits are required to gather in public spaces such as Celebration Square.
Right, but not blocking intersections.
Correct. You are not permitted to block intersections. Peel Regional Police or our security will come and break up the protest.
And thank you for bringing up, this is not a follow-up, but I'm continuing with the same question. And I do speak Arabic myself, and hate speech is not only about certain ethnicity or background. Hate speech unfortunately, on all the platforms right now is reaching and really reaching very, very far. It's unfortunate, and it's time to do something here. We are in Canada. We are not anywhere else. I'm asking you to ask somebody to follow up this, please.
Yes, we absolutely are following up. I've spoken with many of the Jewish organizations, and as I said, the organizers, this is a discussion we have ongoing. We have a diversity and inclusion advisory committee in which we'll give this full consultation, and we will continue to meet with all groups within our city to ensure that the message is clear. No tolerance for any intolerance or hate speech of any kind.
Thank you.
That was your last question, Mayor Crombie. This concludes today's conference. On behalf of the mayor, I want to thank everyone for participating. Have a great day and stay well.
Thank you.